So my name's Sean Hellend. I'm a writer and director, originally from Perth, and I moved to Melbourne about 4 years ago, pursuing career in writing, directing, and film, predominantly wanting to work in feature film and short films. I think there's a lot of things that made me want to get into film. One of them was, just the storytelling element of filmmaking. I love how it mixes everything from music to visuals to performance. I think that's all great. And I think as well, there's a lot to say about the way our current society functions. And there's a lot of stories both on a personal level of the human condition and on a kind of more social and societal or political level as well that are important things to say. So when I was about 15, I love films from a very early age, and whatever I watched, I became interested in. So I'd watch Jaws and become really interested in marine biology, or Jurassic Park and become really interested in paleontology. But this is such a cliche answer. But when I finally watched Pulp Fiction at about 15, that's when I knew it was a storytelling element of filmmaking that I really loved, and it was telling stories. So from there, then I joined the media class in high school, and that's when we kind of did those typical dumb videos, just experimental things. And then I started to take it more seriously and went to uni from there to pursue screenwriting and film. So I studied film at Edith Cowan University back in Perth. So I did a double major in script writing and film. Edith Cowan was a great place. I actually really miss university. Well, I'm glad I've grown and moved to Melbourne and met a whole bunch of new friends and colleagues over here. I think uni gives you just that sense of hope and community, which maybe sometimes doesn't exist in the real world, because myself included, you kind of become cynical if projects fall apart or if you don't get the development funding that you were going for. Whatever it is, I feel like people can get a little bit understandably cynical. But at uni, that really isn't there for that time being. You feel a bit more kind of free, and the world is your oyster. So yeah, I love that entire community, and really miss it. But I'm glad I had the experience nonetheless. The first film I ever made, I'm gonna say the first proper one I did was my final uni film, Sunset, because that was really realistically the first time I was working with a larger crew and kind of had to go through all those more typical elements rather than just do it yourself, just make it as you go along kind of thing. So that was the first I guess proper film I did, and it was so incredibly stressful. I had a migraine for about 3 days afterwards, which it wasn't fun, but in terms of the actual process, it was great. And at the time, I came away with a film that I was proud of. Of course, now I look back on it and I just want to rip it apart. But at the time, that was a lot of fun. The vision that I bring into my work it's an interesting question, because I'm not too sure. I think it changes from project to project on what you need to bring forward. I think I kind of like slow burners as a film, things that build up gradually. So I like to see that not only just in the way that things are paced out script-wise, but also in the camera work, making sure that you're not cutting too much or bringing too many camera angles, is kind of being very purposeful with where you're shooting and exactly what you're filming. I think camera psychology and the way to kind of, I guess, if you can use this phrase, manipulate your audience to think and feel about certain situations just purely on where the camera is positioned is something that's really, really interesting. And in terms of, I guess, the overall filmmaking, I really enjoy taking kind of real world scenarios or, you know, I guess, yeah, again, things that are prevalent in current situations and putting that into a genre piece with horror, or like whether it's horror or thriller, just kind of mixing that around and seeing how you can heighten those elements to, you know, be something that's a bit more fantastical. The favorite film, or my most favorite film that I've made so far, is The Shadow. That's, yeah, a fairly easy one for me. I think with all the films I've made, like, I've enjoyed them on, you know, different levels, but I felt, I guess, as a writer and director, that's one where it kind of started to come all together more so. Like, I felt that the style of filmmaking that I hope to bring to a project was finally kind of formatting. And, you know, with earlier pieces of work, even if I am happy with them at the time, there'd be parts that I felt I'd missed out or hadn't quite captured or maybe not communicated as well enough in the final final film. Whereas with The Shadow, it's kind of it's nowhere near where I actually want to be, but it's a step closer, and that's the important thing. So.
Take a seat. What are you doing here? That wasn't an invitation. Sit. What do you want? I want what I've always wanted. Cut the bullshit. You've got to balance the ledger. I don't know what you're talking about. Yeah, you do.
So, 3 filmmakers that really inspire me. It feels like it's such a long list. I'll say when I was like a little bit younger, David Fincher has always been a huge inspiration. I think his work is not only inspirational in terms of the way he visually directs things, how he's so methodical with his directing, but also what he does with his kind of filmmaking. I find I really love that he will take really important themes or really interesting themes and then put it into like an exciting genre film. Like, I know that, again, this is like a really cliche example, but Fight Club is like that. It's just, it has so much to say and you can interpret that film in multiple ways. But it's also just on the surface a really exciting kind of thriller. Another big inspiration, someone who I think is similar in that element, is Jennifer Kent. The Babadook and the Nightingale are fantastic. I know she's probably classified as like a fairly new filmmaker, but I think her work's incredible. Again, similar thing, especially with the Nightingale, where it takes this revenge film, and I got sucked in because the villains of the piece were so hateful. I just wanted to see them, you know, get their comeuppance. But what she also did incredibly well was show a really ugly side of history that I think has been brushed over in a lot of our education system, and being confronted with that. I remember I went to one of the actor. They had a screening with the producer and a Q&A and everything. Now that's an audience that is used to film, and even that audience, some of them walked out of it because it was too much. But I think that's important because it showed how kind of grueling and gruesome the reality of the whole situation was. Finally, a bit more of a fun filmmaker is Edgar Wright. I absolutely love his style of filmmaking. What I love doing is like trying to take the more like kind of slow methodical nature of like David Fincher and then mix it with like Edgar Wright's like fast-paced editing and see how those two like balance out. His films have been a huge influence just in the way that they managed to balance the tone out. Like if you look at something like Shaun of the Dead, there's some really heartbreaking moments in that film, but it's still mixed in with the comedy so well. It never feels like the tones are jumping too much or just going all over the place. It manages to weave in and out beautifully. And then, he's just in terms of it, I guess his personal character as well, he seems like a really fun person to be around and just a genuine kind of film lover. And I did have a big fanboy moment because I got to go to the Q&A. I was very lucky. My partner got me the tickets to see him at the Baby Driver Q&A at Cinema Nova. So I did have a mini panic attack seeing him in the flesh. And just again, his style of directing and storytelling is really amazing. 3 films that really inspire me. That's a really tough question. I would have to go with one. I'm going to say Jurassic Park. That's maybe a bit of an odd answer, but I kind of just love going back to that film. I think it's a really interesting film because for so long, so many people have spoken about, of course, the great directing, the great special effects, the groundbreaking special effects at the time, but also weirdly on a script level, it's one of the most efficient films, I think, in terms of writing. The characters all tie into the theme of the film really well. Like they all have different ideas about the central theme of, science going too far. But at the same time, and at the same time, you kind of understand these characters. So they're just broad enough that they're diverse in their characteristics, but they've just got enough depth as well that you really care about them. And, enough conflict between them that it creates that tension. I'm trying to think of another film. This is another really recent one, but Hereditary from Ari Aster. That is a film that I am borderline jealous of because it's directing. The directing in it is just so good and on a level of genius that like I kind of get frustrated at because I just think about my own work. I'm like, I don't know if I'll ever reach that. The opening shot basically tells you everything that's going to happen in the film, and having a film like that is incredible. The last film I had it just then, and the last film is another really recent one, but it's Sorry to Bother You by Boots Riley, who has only directed one film so far. He was going to do a Netflix series, I think, before the whole COVID-19 thing came in. That's been one recently that's been really inspirational because it's so out there and so different. But again, it's when I kind of talk about films that have a lot to say, like that film is, and Boots Riley himself is kind of openly like about unionizing workers and definitely has like a lot of ideas about how, or is very anti-capitalist and so forth. And I don't think it really matters on what your thoughts are on those, but he's talking about those in that film and then putting it into this weird comedy sci-fi. So again, in terms of having a film that has a lot to say about a lot of different circumstances, focuses on class, society, racism, and so forth. But then it also is in this really fun genre film. So that's another huge inspiration as well.
Janice? Janice?
Sorry, I'm just spaced out for a second.
How have you been? When you drew these, was it the same as last time?
Yeah. It was like
Like a trance? When did it start?
a week ago.
So what I'm currently working on at the moment, a few different projects. Truthfully, I've gone back to writing, one just because of COVID-19. Productions have, of course, slowed down. So the first thing I'm working on is a corporate video. I don't know how much I can go into it, but it's basically for an engineering company who are currently working with the Department of Health. So that's been a really great project to work on and see that the work that these guys are doing to basically ensure spaces are safe to, be in, especially when, the state starts to reopen and move back to, hopefully as normal as you can situation. Then I'm working on a feature script. So I've been sending that out to a few close colleagues who are giving feedback and tearing it apart, rightfully so. So that's what you always need. You always need someone who is going to have your best interests at heart, but can also give you the very honest feedback that you need. So that's another one. And that's, again, kind of a similar thing where it's a revenge piece, but it entwines more into it as well. And then finally, what I've been working on for a little while is like a horror anthology web series. So I absolutely love horror stories, and I especially love horror anthology stories. Just this idea that there's all these like little separate, strange supernatural occurrences happening in the same universe. I don't know, really interests me. So that's been something that I've been developing in the writing stage for a while, and I would absolutely love to, going into 2021, have that out there or start going into production for it. I think the biggest challenge facing the Australian film industry, I think there's numerous ones, but I think economical is the biggest one, or funding. Now that it looks like funding is being cut in several different directions, what was already a small industry is possibly going to get even smaller. And for someone like myself, I think that, well, I'm kind of, say I go for development funding, I'm in competition with people who are 5-10 years ahead of me, and now they're also out of a job, or they've also had their projects, fall in or collapse, and so I worry about that. But then I also worry about, I think, filmmaking in some sense, and really the arts in general, can have several roadblocks in terms of, I want to say, economic, more like financial resources. Like for someone like me, getting into filmmaking was difficult, but I come from like a middle class family. It can be a little bit easier for me. And then I think about someone who is a little bit younger from me and maybe doesn't have the resources that I did, like say, for example, the financial resources to move interstate, what's going to happen to them and what's going to happen to the next generation of Australian filmmakers. If we're struggling, then people who are at a less fortunate position are going to be struggling more. And especially, I don't know about you guys, but for me, what's great about filmmaking is that there's an ability to tell stories from different and diverse backgrounds. And I would hate to see that be lost because the industry gets smaller. The biggest challenge I've faced in film, again, there's multiple challenges, but I think it's just honestly, self-confidence is one of the biggest things. It's, especially as a writer and a director, you have to be your own champion in a lot of ways, which it can be difficult, especially when you feel like things aren't going well. And I think as you have to have that front with the crew, because if you start losing confidence in front of the cast and crew, then that will have a roll-on effect. So you kind of just have to go in guns blazing, and even if in the back of your mind you're worried about 101 things, you have to pretend like this is going to be the best film that's ever been made, which I feel like is a challenge, especially for myself, because like I'm like in normal social situations I'm like a fairly confident person, but especially when it comes to my work, I'm not. I hate every film I've made to a large extent because I just look back on it and critique all the work. So that's definitely been one of the biggest challenges. My process for choosing actors, so it's not really that different from anyone else. I think we'll put up the audition requests, and then just hold auditions over the next few days. This is going to sound like the most hippie thing in the world, but I think it's just a vibe. I really do. I think there's just filmmaking is in your gut, and as prepared as I like to be in terms of everything, whether it's actors, auditions, storyboarding, scripting, I think there just is a certain point where you kind of have to go with your instinct. And I actually remember that happening on my last uni film. I had to kind of convince the crew that the actor we went with was the right actor, because and I really couldn't give a better answer than like when he was reading the lines and when we were going through it, he just felt the part and he just had that kind of killer instinct for the role. And yeah, sometimes you just have to kind of put it out into the universe and see how it goes, which again sounds like such a hippie thing, but I mean, look at me, like, what kind of answer am I going to give? So yeah, I absolutely believe in giving unknown actors a chance. I think anyone deserves a chance. Yeah, there's really, filmmaking's such an odd thing, because and this has happened several times to me where I try not to do this, but I might have, say, if you're writing the script, kind of a visual representation of someone in your head, because you kind of have to have that just so you see the film, how it's visually playing out, of who that character is going to be. And then you go into the auditions and someone who is not only like looks different, but reads different to what you imagined, kind of blows you away. So I think you've always got to give unknown actors a chance, and yeah, give them that chance to prove you wrong. So dream actors to work with, well, one would be Jake Gyllenhaal. I really love his style, especially his turn in Nightcrawler. I thought that was amazing. Yeah, he's just been one of my favorite actors to watch, and I love, even as he's kind of gotten more famous and even done kind of like, the Marvel roles and stuff, he still seems to go back to independent work, which I really kind of love and appreciate. And another person actually is Xavier Samuel. So from The Loved Ones, I absolutely love him in that film. I think his turn is great, and like his role is great, and that was a lot of fun watching him. And it's kind of, I don't know, the way he doesn't say almost anything in that film, but everything comes from just his expressions and reactions, and I thought that was really great. I'd love to work with. I was trying to remember her name, but Elizabeth Moss is someone that, again, I've seen her in a whole bunch of work, and I feel like sometimes she's underappreciated in like her roles. Like, she's not someone that like she's now seems to be getting like more traction, but she's just someone, again, who she can say just so much with like her facial expressions or eyes, and I think that's really great. I think that's like really powerful performance. And a performance in Invisible Man, again, she was like, for most of that film, she was reacting to literally nothing, empty hallways, but still you felt that tension with her, and that's a real testament to not only the direction but her own performance as well. So with thinking whether I stay local or go to Hollywood or overseas, I think filmmaking like nowadays is just international. I would really love to go to New York or LA at some point. Maybe not with the current situation that's playing out, but I guess we'll see how that all goes. So I would absolutely love to go there, but I have made plans to move to Europe as well, whether it's Germany or London. Looking to move to one of those countries because truthfully, they have a lot more productions and it seems like a lot more opportunity over there. However, I absolutely love Australia, and there is a part of me that would always want to, even if I did go overseas or to Hollywood and stay for a while, dream big. Even if I did go over there for a little while, I'd love to do even what other filmmakers have done. Say, again, dream big, but someone like Lee Winnell, where he took that step and went to Hollywood. They did the Saw franchise. They've done a bunch of work over there, but now his two latest films, Upgrade and The Invisible Man, have now been, Melbourne and Sydney for respectively. So even doing something like that later down the track when you've kind of built up your career elsewhere, I would absolutely love to do that. So the advice I'd give to aspiring filmmakers, God, I don't know. That's a difficult question, but I think it's, just to be your own self-champion, and know who your allies are. There's a lot of really great people in the film industry who you can send your film to, your script to, whatever, or get on to collaborate with, and they will be your best friend and they'll help you out and you will grow and build things together. But at the same time, you have to be sort of careful that you don't keep negative people around you too much, or people that don't like you, whether for whatever reason that is, because sometimes you can mistake basically bad faith criticism for genuine criticism. And I think you need to find that balance of having really great constructive criticism come back to you so you can grow as a person and as a filmmaker, but also understanding when, who you choose to collaborate with. That'd be my advice, and just keep going. If you can keep writing, if you can keep making film, then do it, and do it because you have to say something, and because you want to say something, and because you want to expose the world for what it is. So I guess I hope everyone keeps well and safe now that we're looks like we're getting out of the whole lockdown situation, and just keep on making film and keep on writing and telling your stories. So.